Hey guys, it's your girl Stacy back again with another video, and if you're new here, thanks for watching and for partaking in part 2 of this Jamaican dinner. We're going to start off with getting our prep ready for our stewed cabbage. I'm speeding through this process because I just don't feel like you need to see the entirety of me cutting up the carrots, but I did want you to see how I julienne them and thin enough to be able to stew down, as well as use for the escovitch. We're gonna move on to our cabbage. I got lucky with this guy here. It wasn't too big and it wasn't too small. It was just the right size and just enough of what I needed. I went with half of this cabbage. I didn't need too much. I wasn't trying to make a big set of stewed cabbage, but as you can see, I'm just cutting them julienne style. And then I'm going to separate the bits and pieces because sometimes the cabbage tends to stick to its core. So I'm just making sure to divide it. So it's important to separate it now, so that way when it's cooking and it's actually when it's ready, you don't have to worry about any of those thick rooted pieces. They would have already been separated. And I did put some of the carrots aside for the escovitch, to which I'll be making later. To that batch of cabbage and carrots, I'm going to add some onions. Now here I'm cutting up a large set of onions because of the fact that I'm going to use some of it for the escovitch and some of it for the cabbage. Now the escovitch, I did do some julienne and I did some rings. I mixed it up together, and that's just a preference. Now we're moving on to our spices for our marinade for the fish. I'm going to start with some of my fish seasoning, which I used only one packet. Then I went ahead and added some adobo spice and some black pepper, as well as some some salt. And then I added some garlic powder, as well as some paprika, the juice of half of a lime, a tablespoon of green seasoning, and some vegetable oil. Now, again, as I always say in each of my videos, I shall say it again, that I do add the oil because it does help to adhere to the meat a lot better. And I added some allspice and some crushed chili peppers thereafter. And then you're going to mix all of that together, creating a nice loose paste. Once your paste is done, you'll set it aside so you can get your fish prepped. I cleaned the fish prior to with some lime juice and water, rinsed thoroughly, and then now, as you see, I'm slitting some slits throughout the sides of the fish, about 3 of them. This is what I was shown and taught when I first learned how to make this. It just makes it easier to get the marinade or your spices into the flavoring of the fish as it's marinating, and it also provides a deeper flavor into the meat of the fish, I should say. So moving right along, like I was saying, make sure you get all that marinade all throughout your fish. While I was cleaning the fish, I had to also make sure that I descaled it, because even though I asked for the gentleman at the fish shop to do it for me while he removed the head and cleaned up the tail a bit, you still need to double check and make sure that it's properly descaled, because a lot of these guys, you know, they're in a hurry, they got other customers and they're going to get it as clean as they can. But whether he got it as clean as he could or not, being that the person who I am going to make sure that this fish is properly cleaned and descaled. Once you've got your fish pieces fully covered in your marinade, you're going to put that in a Ziploc bag and set it aside for about an hour or 2, and you can get started with the next step. Now this is the part that I enjoyed because I love to get hands-on with things, and this is me making some dumplings. Now I wanted some boiled dumplings, so I'm going with the simple and basic classic way, which is flour with a pinch of with a pinch of salt and some water. And I'm also going to boil some plantains. I used the sweet ones this time, and I cut them up in nice thick pieces. And I'm going to add both the plantain and the dumplings to some water that's boiling with a few pimento seeds. Now, as I was kneading my dough, I realized it was a little bit too on the sticky side, so I added a pinch more flour just so that I can get the right consistency. And as you can see, it's there. So I can start creating my little balls and flattening them out, just like how I seen Janice do, quick and easy. Like this meal is really, really one of those meals where, you think, oh, I'm having some fish and dumpling and plantain. When I tell you all of that combined together and the stew cabbage, I was full after eating this, okay? With the Escovitch, Lord, I love, love, love having plantains and dumplings on the side of my meal, especially with a Jamaican dish. I often like to have it with my ackee and saltfish because I don't always want to have rice. That's just my little story on this. So I'm going to continue to knead the dough and flatten it and put somewhat of a slight hole in the middle. I don't know why it's done. I wish I could explain it. I'm going based on what I was shown. So if there are any Jamaicans out there who have any tips, please leave it in the comments and let me know. Let me know. I'm curious because I also like to do this recipe and fry it, but when I do fry it, I add some baking powder. So, yeah. Now that they're done, I'm going to start with the plantain. Oh yeah, I forgot. I put a bay leaf in there with the pimento seed. All right, you see it floating in there. I start with the plantains first. I let that boil down for about 15 minutes, and then I'll go ahead and add the dumpling once I know that the plantains are halfway done. And then I'll add a little tip of oil to that water and some vinegar just to prevent the dumplings from sticking together. Now we're going to get started with our cabbage. I'm using half of the garlic that's in that bowl because the other half was used for the pepper shrimp, which you can find in my playlist, the video on how to prepare that. So I'm going to saute the garlic, and while it's sauteing, I'm going to go ahead and add to that some pimento seeds. I love me some pimento seeds or pimento berry seeds. It's just delicious. It adds a kick, and I like when I'm eating my food and I end up with one of them in one of the bites that I take, and it's really good. So delicious. Moving right along, I'm going to add some thyme to that. I'm going to let that simmer for a little bit before going ahead and adding my cabbage, carrots, and onions. And I'm going to add them gradually and mix, as well as adding the water gradually because I don't want too much water since cabbage carries water within itself, and so it will draw down some water from its actual leaves. If you catch what I'm saying, my grandmother used to say it would draw down. So draw down meaning it will create its own water, loosely translated. So now that I've added all of the cabbage, the carrots, and the onions to the sauteed pimento berry seeds, I'm going to go right on ahead and add some spices to this mix right here, starting with some garlic powder. Then I'm going to add some salt. And then I'm adding some black pepper. And I'm going to mix that all up before adding some boiling water to it. Like I said earlier, I'm going to add the water gradually. I don't want to add too much, so I'm going to add a bit at a time. I don't know if y'all noticed, but I also did add a whole pepper in there because you know me already. I'm gonna add a pepper to the mix, okay? And I'm adding half of a bouillon cube. That adds additional flavor when it's simmering down. I like to add it. You can use beef, you can use chicken, you can use fish or vegetable if you want to make it an ITEL dish. But I think I used beef for this one. Didn't really have a preference. I'm going in and adding some of that chef spice because I've got it, and because I put that in everything, I'm adding some of my Haitian chef spice to this before letting it simmer down. Lord, it smells good. Check out the glasses. I'm such a goof and I love it. So I'm just gonna mix, and then when I believe that it's reached the flavor profile that I was looking for, I'm just gonna let that simmer down. I let it simmer for about 15 minutes and then it's done. Next, we're moving on to the Escovitch. So I've added 1 cup of water to 1 cup of vinegar, and I'm gonna let that warm up into the saucepan before I add my Scotch bonnet pepper. I used a whole 1, seeds and all. I julienne that up, and I'm gonna let that simmer in the vinegar and water mixture. And while that's simmering, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add some thyme. Next, I'm gonna go in with my carrots, and I start with the carrots because even though you want them to simmer with it, you want it to still have a bit of a crunch, but also to cook down a little bit. So I did simmer the carrots 5 minutes prior to adding the sweet orange pepper to it and the brown sugar, and then I'm gonna just mix all that up together, let that simmer with a little bit of salt and some black pepper before I go ahead and add my onions, which I always save for last because onions tend to cook really fast and I want to have a bit of a crunch to my onion. So I'm definitely waiting to do that last. Ooh, I forgot to mention I added the adobo spice. And there you have it. There are my onions. I've added those, and this is your Escovitch. Lord, you know, the aroma of the vinegar and the onions, so delicious. And now we're getting to the fish. Ooh, that pan was hot, 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 and the fish was ready, ready, ready. Now I cooked this fish about 5 minutes on each side before flipping. So I would just, wait 5 minutes, keeping an eye on it, shifting it around so that it wouldn't stick. I don't like when the skin of the fish sticks to the frying pan, so I'm always cautious about ensuring that it doesn't. So after 5 minutes, I flip, and then I'll go ahead and do that again for a maximum cook time of 20 minutes. And here you go. This is the completed dish with the pepper shrimp, the plantain, the dumpling, oh God, the stewed cabbage, the fried fish, and the Escovitch. When I tell you, a sister was happy to eat this meal. Ooh wee, yeah man. Oh God, I was so happy to eat this. Wow. Thank you to each and every one of you for watching. I really appreciate it. Please like, share, and subscribe. And remember, God is good all the time. And all the time, God is so, so good.